Chandrika, at that, can you take us forward into the next bit? Like, this is honestly one of the discussion I have been looking forward to most in this podcast. Chandu, about the famous last words thing, if you could, yeah.
Yeah, so a very interesting topic, famous last words, because I remember having this discussion in my literature class as well. So my professor said a very interesting thing, which made me stop and think that, yeah, see, famous someone's last words signify a lot about their entire lives and that person itself. And to me personally, it doesn't matter whether that person is someone who has done something recognizable in their life or not. A person's last word is something that is greater than normal in itself, because it's a human being that's dying and still manages to say something. It's iconic according to me. It doesn't depend, but nevertheless, it is only famous people whose last words are something that makes you stop and think, because they are that influential, right? So I researched a lot and I could only find famous foreigners, famous Europeans, or famous Americans or someone. And then I was like, no, but this cannot happen. I need to find someone, apart from Gandhiji, whose famous last words from India that I could find. And I found some very, very interesting ones. So I'll start with number one, Beethoven. Okay, I'll just get right into it. Beethoven's last line, it's a very disputed line, because people of course think that अरे ऐसा थोड़ी ना बोला होगा उन्होंने कुछ भी मतलब, that is the normal thing, and that nobody can be that iconic. But Beethoven's last line, supposed last line, is friends applaud, the comedy is over. Now, interesting thing about this quote, during his time, it was a very famous, very famous line that was used during the plays or the acts that used to happen during his time. So he used that in the term that the line that was supposedly used to end a play, or like used to say that, okay, this is the end of the play, friends applaud, the comedy act is over. He used that to describe his own life. So I can go days and days and days talking about him as a person, but I personally don't know much about him as a person. But just this one line says a lot about what his thinking process is and what he thinks about himself as well. So friends applaud, the comedy is over can be sort of, uh, a joke on himself as well. It can be that he's making fun of his life. It can be that even after, it can be that I don't think he was that recognized during his own time, and he got much more recognition after. Of course, a lot of time went after he passed away, right? So maybe it was somewhat of a metaphor for that as well. But I can go on days and days about this. So I'll just go to my favorite one. I saw so many famous last words, and this is by far my favorite one. It's by Marie Antoinette. She's the very famous "Let them eat the cake" person. Yeah. So she was the wife of Louis XVI, and she was basically sent to the guillotine to be killed for various atrocious things that she participated in. And her very famous line, last word, before she was sent to, to get hanged, were that she said this in French, of course, was that, "Pardon me, sir, I meant not to do it." And what is this about? So the person who was supposed to be her executioner, she stepped on his foot and then said that, "Pardon me, sir, I meant not to do it." And those were her last words. And then she was executed. I love this. Because to me, it must be an honest mistake, but to me, it seems like this is such shameless behavior. I love it, because she is not shy to own up to her being this sort of a shameless person. To me, it feels like she's unabashedly herself and being like, "Oops, sorry, didn't mean to do it." It seemed like that to me, and I feel that it is wonderful how unabashedly strong that might come to any person, saying that some moments happen and you're just like, can a person be really that shameless? And this is one of the best examples of that moment for me personally. It is iconic to me. There was one more from Winston Churchill. Uh, I was very fascinated by Winston Churchill after I saw the series Crown. I wanted to know more about him rather than just know that, okay, this name is something familiar. So, Winston Churchill, he died at a very old age. He was, I think, approximately 90 or something when he passed away. And very, very famous and very, very eminent personality. And his last words were, I am bored of it all. Those were his last words. And someone who's led such an iconic life, someone who has had such a great influence on an entire nation and its workings, and his last words were, I'm bored of it all. I feel like that's kind of like what Beethoven said, right? Beethoven kind of made a joke on himself, but here Winston Churchill is just showing that, yeah, this was not enough to entertain me. Yeah, I'm bored of it all. And I feel that I just want to sit with Winston Churchill and show him the list of things he's done, and I'm like, you're bored of this, but it would still not be enough to satisfy him. And that says a lot about how he as a person can never be satisfied. That's what it comes across to me as, that he just cannot be satisfied with anything. And that was the reason that he did so many things as he did in his entire lifetime. Now, coming to the eminent Indian personalities, oh, this is amazing. Of course, Mahatma Gandhiji's Hey Ram is something very famous, and I feel that personally, I know this is going to sound very controversial, but it seems like something that will come out of, like an eminent response that will come out of you. Like when you get hit and you're like, Arey yaar, mummy, something like that. It's like, oh, hey Ram. It sounds like that to me. Personally, it didn't hold any. I've seen so many papers written on Hey Ram and everything, and I just feel like, yeah, he must be a believer of Ram. I don't know, but it sounds like a reaction to an obvious thing that happened to him. He was shot. What else would his last words be? But coming to the more interesting things, I was watching this new series that came on Amazon Prime. It's called the Mumbai Files or Mumbai Diaries or something like that. And it was about the 26/11 terrorist attacks. And I started to research about that. And Hemant Karkare, who was the chief of Mumbai's anti-terrorist squad, one of the most prominent people who were involved during that attack, this is something that gives me goosebumps all the time, and just, is a reminder of how uncertain life can be. His last call was with his wife, and his last call was that his last word supposedly after he was gunned down, before he was gunned down, was that, oh, everything is all right, I'll call back soon. And then he cut the call and then he was gunned down. And this is something that gives me goosebumps and terrifies me, that life is completely uncertain. And even watching throughout that series, I had personally had so much anxiety that I had to watch it in breaks. It was so thrilling to see that, because I could imagine, that it was something that is so nerve wracking, and not in the sense, in the obvious sense that there are terrorists involved, but also in the sense that there were not just police officers and, of course, the obvious people who are there who had a hand in it, but also the unspoken heroes and the unspoken villains as well. Going off to Rajesh
Although
Khanna.
that's such a man thing to do. Like
Yeah.
at the end, you're dying like, kuch bhi hua, chup ho jana.
Yeah. He's just like, yeah, nothing happened, I'll call right back up. And then he was gone. He was literally shot down, which is something so terrifying to me. That it can be like that he was trying to reassure his wife or something, but I don't know. It just seems that life is so uncertain. One of the most funniest ones that I could find, very famous actor Rajesh Khanna. His supposed last line was that, "Time ho gaya, pack up." Those were his last words. Ki time ho gaya, pack. Yeah, and it, to me, it's something that, might be something that he must have used in his, like movie, as an actor life,
The
because
movie
that,
Anand,
huh,
the
huh.
movie Anand, where Rajesh Khanna is going to die eventually, I think he embodied that same spirit while he was actually dying, where he's like a
Huh?
happy man and he knows he's going to die soon, and he's like, "Chalo, ho gaya, pack up."
And that is amazing, because this is a very actor and film oriented term, right? That you're packing up a shoot or something and you're like, chalo, time ho gaya, pack up. It sounds like to me, it's like maybe I'm reading too much into it, or maybe I'm just emotional. But it to me, it seems like that he's speaking of like his entire life was just that, as an actor, as the work that he did as an actor, as a movie star. So he's just encompassing all of that extravagant life as an actor, as an iconic actor, as just time ho gaya, chalo back up. And there were, of course, Indira Gandhi. Indira Gandhi, as we all know, was assassinated by her bodyguards. Her last words were Namaste. She was greeting the guards. She was greeting the guards saying Namaste, and then they shot her down. Which again, something that I should not find a little hilarious, but it is. I'm so sorry. But also, it just says it is nerve wracking as well that you are talking to the people who are supposedly going to assassinate you without having any clue about it, and you're greeting them, you're like namaste. And those are the people, again, the uncertainty of life. I have a lot of them. I have a lot of quotes that I can go into, that I can just go on and on and on about. There is
Before
one
we
more
do
thing.
that, before we do that, Chandu, I thought maybe we could go around and have a discussion about our last words. Have you guys
Hmm.
put any thought into that? Like what do have you thought about what do you want your last words to be?
I would want to say, or even like let it be written on my epitaph, if any, would be DND.
Wow, that's a nice one actually. Hmm. I don't know why it's a terrible joke, but I want mine to be that the last meal I request is a bowl of cereal, and I take it to the gallows with me because I assume I'm getting hanged. And then I go, as you all know, I was always a serial killer. I don't know. That was my dream.
I found one more very interesting quote. It was from a very famous serial killer. He was kind of like the last like person evicted in Oklahoma State, USA, and his last like one of the executioner. He was given the electric chair. So one of the last like person before he was sent to the electric chair asked him that what are your last words, and he's sitting on that electric chair, and his last words are, "You want a headline? French fries." He screams and then he's electrocuted.
His name was James French or something like
Yes,
that.
James
Yeah.
French Donald, I
French
think, or something.
fries.
Yeah,
Electric chair.
Yeah.
I loved it.
yeah,
Oh.
it is amazing. And I feel like my last words would be something along the lines of
No more reels, please.
no, no. It can be. I'm a very indecisive person, so I can't decide. I can't decide. I feel like I vibe with what Kishore Kumar said. He said that I am not having a heart attack, but if you call a doctor, I might really have a heart attack. So that just shows how stubborn he is. That नहीं हो रहा, कुछ भी नहीं हो रहा है, अगर बुलाओगे सच्ची में कुछ हो जाएगा. That's just me, like how stubborn I am with life. So something along the lines of that. I haven't decided yet. I'm very indecisive.
Yeah, but apart from like these jokes, I feel the last word of a person like uh, make a very big impact, because I remember like it's on the little emotional side when my grandfather passed away. Like his little words still give me like goosebumps, and like they just stay with you for a very very long time. Yeah.
Which is why I want it to be a joke. Because if it stays with them for a very long time, I want people to think of me and go, Abbe yaar. That's what I want the reaction to be. Ay, yaar. Not
You could
laughter.
you could have get you could get this on your epitaph saying finally a stand whatever sit down comedian or something.
Wow. Lying down comedian. Under the ground comedian.
Like down comedian.
Or
No,
maybe you can,
no,
maybe you can just
I,
go
no,
like,
I have one for Salil sir. Okay. So it can be like because everyone will be standing around, his body. So it can be like finally receive the standing ovation.
and the
Okay.
last word should be aware, the signature aware of Salil. That should be a lot. Oh,
Okay, thank
We
you.
have so many.
From the roast of Salil. All right. So one of the last few things that we had in your second subtopic, where we discussed the many uses of language, such as advertising, famous last words, etc. We also spoke a little bit about constitutions. So we'll just get into that for a second. What is a constitution? A constitution is basically a set of rules or a codified, defined, like written structure under which a country or a republic is supposed to run. Constitutions have been around for a really long time. Some of the oldest were written as far back as 1600, which was the Constitution of San Marino. Of course, there are very, very old versions of these. A constitution is also known in certain parts of the world as basic law, and you can tell that from where it comes from. The earliest codified basic laws that were written down were like the Code of Urnamu, the Code of Hammurabi, Draco's legal code that Athens used to follow. That's where the word draconian comes from. These were the oldest. But now let's like catapult ourselves immediately into the modern world, into sort of the 20th century. Of course, we have the America's Constitution, which was written in the 18th century, which is one of the shortest and the oldest still surviving complete constitution in the world. What does that mean? Like I told you, San Marino is the oldest, but it does not govern the entirety of the government. See, because what a constitution is supposed to do in today's world is a constitution is supposed to lay down the framework under which a government functions and also tell you a little bit about its structure and the relationship between its executive, judiciary, and legislature and its subparts. And that's what constitutions are supposed to do. Now, one of the things that we asked you to study is, please like contrast the constitutions and the way they were drafted of India and Japan. And these are two very contrasting cases that I'll get into just now. If you guys know anything about Japan, you will know that they were heavily involved in the Second World War. First, there was the bombing of Pearl Harbor, which there are conspiracy theories around that. But if you want to get into it, you can. If you don't want to, forget about it. But then what happened was that the first atomic bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan, and that ended the Second World War. And that really changed a lot of things. One of the things that it changed was that Japan used to follow an old constitution that was written during the times of the Meiji Empire. And of course, they had to write a whole new post-war constitution very, very quickly. How quickly? The Constitution of Japan was written in about 1 week. 1 week. That's about as much time as the average Delhi University student takes to complete all of their assignments together. That's how long it took for Japan to write their constitution, ladies and gentlemen. So let's contrast this with India for a second. India's constitution, you might have heard, started with a drafting committee. There was a drafting committee that sat down. That committee earlier had 389 members, but then India got partitioned and it got down to 299 members. This Constituent Assembly met, I'm not very sure, 11 times or 15 times across more than a year in order to come together and to debate and to thrash out and to produce the Constitution of India in the form that we see it right now, right? So now let's take this into two parts. Japan's constitution was written in a week. Who was it written by? It was written by 24 Americans who lived in a single hotel and a core committee of 6 guys who sat down in one hotel room and wrote it down. This all happened under the leadership of General MacArthur Douglas, who was the leader of the Allied forces, the supreme commander of the Allied forces. So he was the one who sort of pushed this constitution onto them. Now, that is not to say that America wrote the constitution and Japan took it lying down. Please read deeper about it on Encyclopedia Britannica and on like international newspapers of the time. If you go through the archives, you'll be able to see it. There was a back and forth. But how much back and forth can there really be if the whole constitution was written in 1 week by 24 dudes sitting in a hotel? All right. Once again, contrast that to India, which was one of the largest, like, areas of land which until that time was not even governed under one government. So you had people from princely states who had come up, people from British India who had come up. They had tried, of course, to be very, very to distribute it among regions, castes, religions, and yes, this thing was representative. But one thing and one tidbit I want to leave you about the Constitution of India, and you can hate me for this, is that over 90% of the people in the Constituent Assembly of India, no matter how many states, cities, wherever they were from, were all Hindu Brahmins. All right. So yes, it was a lot more debated and deliberated than the Japanese constitution, but there were also some problems in the way the Indian constitution was drafted. That's not to diss the people who founded it. That's also the real socio-political realities of the time. But let's move away from controversial territory for a second and get back into this. What do you think a constitution's job is, and how do you think a constitution should be drafted? Now, you will notice when you look at the same Constitution of India that different people have very different opinions on it, right? What you see over here is the preamble of the Constitution of India, which defines India as a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. Now, different people have different problems with different parts of this preamble. To understand the narrative of each of these people, the long historical struggle that all of these people have been a part of is something in itself. But for us to understand, so is there a part in a constitution that you do not agree with, is one of the questions that we had asked. Now, constitutions, of course, we are talking about constitutions of governments and countries, but if you also look at like vision and mission statements and constitutions of companies, etc., when a new employee joins Google, they receive a long document, which is the code of conduct for a Google employee. And the first line on it is, do not be evil. Do not be evil. Now that in itself is extremely debatable, right? Google is telling people to not be evil. The same people who control information, the same people who decide whether I can search for like whatever illegal thing I want to do, I can Google it. If they did not want people of a terrorist organization to meet and to go to the headquarters and get indoctrinated, they could have removed that information, but they don't. Of course, that's also about freedom of the internet and all. What I'm trying to say is that there are debates around all of this, okay? And when it comes to a part of the constitution that you don't think a country lives up to or deserves, for example, there are certain people in India who believe that the word secular should not be a part of it. I will not elaborate any further. There are people in India who believe that the word socialist is outdated. And maybe it is. Let's take a look at that argument for a second. We were liberalized in 1991. India is not a socialist country by any means, especially under the current government. In a socialist government, a lot of the things, the means of production, the services that a general common man depends on for their living are and should be controlled by the government. Today, we are selling away all of those. Are we close or are we far from being at the point where we remove the word socialist from our constitution? That is one question we would like you all to think about. And another thing we would like you all to think about is there any need to remove the word, or is a constitution just something that should serve as a framework and we should not take it too literally? So yeah, these are just some of the questions that I wanted to leave in front of you guys. Please read about the Meiji Constitution of Japan. When the committee was formed to rewrite the Constitution of Japan, at that time, these guys claimed that it is the fault of this old constitution that Japan became a military power. And because of that, we feel it needs amendment. And then they said about amending it. Is that true or not? For that, you need to look into the history of Japan. Most people do not know this, but Japan was a major imperial power. They took over large parts of China. Like there's a part of China called Manchuria, which those guys controlled for a long time. They even at a time tried to colonize Korea and a lot of different parts. In fact, what we know today as the nation of Japan was not always under one empire, but was collected together under the Meiji Empire. So yeah, please read a little bit more about Japan, and yeah, more than anime is what I'm trying to say basically. And it's a great way to understand how constitutions work, how they should work or should not, if you really begin to compare these as we try to do for you guys just now. If we could open it up to everyone at this point, yeah, maybe we could start by talking about the Indian Constitution, and if there is any part of this preamble of the Constitution that you guys think is debatable, what is it? And yeah, maybe we can have a conversation about this where we don't kill each other. Let's talk about it. Sure.
There was this constitutional debate regarding around the Indian Constitution, which had a member saying that why do we not begin our constitutional preamble with the phrase "in the name of God." I think there is one of these European constitutions that starts with this. So, despite, I mean, I have personally loved the constitutional debates because I think representatives of that time, there are different arguments regarding what representation means. So, for different theories, in fact. So, one of the theories says that, say, if I'm a representative of, say, the state of Karnataka, I will do everything in my power to promote the interest of people living in Karnataka. No matter what my own interest is, but I will promote all their interests. The second theory says that the fact that they chose me as a representative means that they want me to be a responsible, rational person and do what I think is in the interest of everybody. So I will base my decisions on my own rationale. So these two theories differ. And I think the members of the Constitutional Assembly were great in the sense that even though they had been elected from different parts and came from almost the same party, Indian National Congress, I think more than 85%, they had different arguments and different stands to each issue. And those debates are they're high in quality. So there was this question on whether we should start a preamble with "in the name of God" phrase. And there was this member who said, I do not remember his name, he said that even though I am a believer in God, I don't think that the constitution should start with this phrase because there are atheists or agnostics living in India who do not believe in God, but they will believe in the Constitution of India as citizens. So the fact that they could accommodate other people's belief despite being believers in something else, I think that is something that I really will remember. So it's a great thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think that being secular is something that the Constitution of India, I feel like, has done like a somewhat great job at it, like acknowledging everyone. But when I hear Constitution, there are two things that come to my mind. Number one was that there was the small incident that comes to my mind where there was a small debate in one part of the Constitution about Hindi being the national language of
Yeah.
India. And I love that debate because there was a woman who answered him saying that, sir, um, what about those who are, there are these many, there are more than 3,000 or 300 languages in India. Not everyone speaks Hindi. What about them? And that person replied back saying something nonchalant, saying that, oh, I don't care, but majority speaks Hindi. So that debate is one of my favorite debates to go into at all times. And I love that there was a debate about this as well. That there wasn't some sort of that, okay, no, but it is going to be. No, there was a proper debate. I love that fact. And the number two thing that when I hear Constitution, my mind straight away goes to the father of our Constitution, B.R. Ambedkar. And I feel that that is the one of the most respectable people for me. I have a paper in my literature class saying literature and caste. So I am reading a lot about him, even more than usual about him. And I feel that that man is the reason why an entire class of people is getting even somewhat recognition, and that says a lot about our society per se. That says a lot about how much he had to struggle to get that little recognition in the Constitution of India. And how that man's resilience led to it being a proper, like a proper part of a formal framework that shapes the India. And I feel that that is something spectacular. Constitution of India, for that I will say that they do acknowledge people. Implementation is something I would rather not go on a rant on, but constitution itself includes within itself such acknowledgement of such vast areas, something that I think that the constitution even contains some aspect that India as a society is not ready to discuss yet or even fully acknowledge yet. But yeah, I feel that the constitution of India is much more vast than what people take it to be.
So I agree with what everybody said. I just have like a question in mind whenever I think of constitution. Um, so like legislature has the right to amend the constitution and stuff. And in the past, during the emergency time and stuff, we have seen that constitution was kind of played with, like with the like by the ruling party in power and stuff. So I just have like I don't know, like it's just something that comes to my mind. Uh, no matter how great a constitution is, doesn't it like eventually depends upon the like the ruling party in power, uh, as to how far that greatness is going to go. And so I just feel there should be something that places constitution above the like at a more higher level, that it's a little more difficult to amend it, especially in India.
Mm, mm, mm.
So yeah, this is one thing that I feel about it. And yes, I agree with what all Deeksha and Chandrika said. Like the making of constitution equally fascinates me too, like the Indian constitution especially. And I did not know that Japan's constitution was written in 1 week.
Yeah.
That was equally fascinating because I take I take like when I was doing my graduation from Delhi University, for completing my assignments, I took more than 10 days, like the last days. So, constitution, okay. Yeah.
Uh, so, like what you said, there needs to be something that protects the constitution against like a government or an executive. This for everyone. Do read a little bit about the basic structure of the Indian constitution, right? There was this case Keshavananda Bharti
Yeah.
versus Union of India. I think
Yeah.
that is that before that a lot of these things were done, and since then, like the Indian legal system did that, and actually a lot of American and British lawmakers and everyone sort of looks at that as an example of how to actually accomplish something constitutionally. So
Yeah. But
yeah,
then,
huh,
here, like, yeah, I've read about the case. It was in 12th class political science. Yeah. But
okay.
again, the other question that comes here is how to decide what the basic structure of a constitution should be. But then again, I think it's going to go like very deep and lengthy into. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, that
I
is
think
legal philosophy. That is,
yeah,
huh,
to sum up this whole discussion, I think, and to answer questions raised by both Salil sir and Muskan, I think the thing is that the constitution embodies two kinds of values. One, the foundational values, the values that mattered at the time of founding the nation. One, second, it's almost utopian. Okay, so it embodies an ideal that we want to achieve eventually in where we take the country. And I do not know how fitting this phrase is, but for me, constitution is almost like um, religious or philosophical books that are open to interpretation. Thankfully, within countries, we
yeah.
have the judiciary to interpret it. And to answer Muskan's question, I think it is solely the responsibility of the judiciary then to decide what the basic structure doctrine is, what comes under it, and then to protect it against, say, the misuse of power. So yeah, that, and so I think constitution should not be amended. It could be amended, say, in particular provisions regarding the functioning of government, but with regards to its values, especially the preamble, which forms a part of the basic structure, I don't think it is worth amending, because then it embodies the, the founding values of the nation.
All right. On that note, we're going to end this podcast. We're going to end this discussion. We hope you guys enjoyed it. We know not everyone saw everything. What we are going to do is leave timestamps in the description of this video so that you guys can go and check out whatever part it is that you are the most interested in. We do highly recommend watching all of it when you have absolutely nothing else to do, or leave it on in the background, just because there might be some learning by osmosis, like the episode of Dexter's Lab when he learns omelette du fromage. That if we can do something like that for you, wow, that would be amazing. Once again, guys, please let us know in the comments and in the chat what you would like us to discuss next time for the next episode. From here, or from all of us here at Behes, we are signing out right now, and we'll see you in the next episode. All right.